Now let's see if I can keep a total focus on an XYZ scatter plot, right? Between electrons, protons, and neutrons, or if you will, the balance of your calculus, which is your math codes, math and physics codes, right? Between two magnetic poles on the planet, between negative ions and positive ions, right? And the exchange, the rate of exchange, right? Between, if you will, gifters, the loss and gain of electrons, protons, and neutrons, to maintain the balance in the pressure walker ecosphere, magnetosphere of the planet, right? Between blood banks, which are memory banks, which are water banks, which are water tables, okay, and ion exchange. The mineral kingdom, ions, the camera ions, the mirror. And so I'm doing this video on behalf of a very dear friend of mine in Thailand, a mother, and she asked me if I would do a video to address something that, because of what she's experiencing, she was experiencing, if you will, you know what a D wave is, right? If you see a D, a vertical line this way, right, which is geometric or mathematical geometry, a vertical line that's going straight up and down. So sometimes the way that I do this, and I want to keep this a tight focus for you, Kunjoy. That's a vertical line, right? So sometimes what I use, because most folks, in order to do this, what's held in memory of how it works geometrically, like an architect or a carpenter, right? Building a house that starts with a foundation, right? So they want the foundation to be what? Level, much like sea level or atmospheric pressure, seeking to be in balance, which is an equilibrium state between the waves of communication in DNA templates, right? Between the negative and the positive ions of the blood, which is the water worlds, okay? So if you took, in your mind, you see a picture of the carpenter's level, the long ones. Some of them are longer than others, because I worked in construction for self-evident reasons. And you have the bubble, right? And some of the longer levels, carpenter levels, they'd have three. Did you ever notice 3 circles between 2 horizontal lines? 3 circles. And in the center of that circle was another horizontal line with a little bubble in the center, right? Just like you have the bubble and a gyroscope on a dashboard, a GE dashboard, a General Electric dashboard inside of an airplane, where the pilot and the co-pilot sit, and there's a gyrodome, a gyroscope, neuro-ion. Now we're back to the arrows. Now we're back to the center point of a compass, the center point of a sphere, an ecosphere, okay? So you have a level that's going vertical, and then you have a horizontal line going horizontal. So you have longitude, vertical, and then you have the other carpenter's level going horizontal. Now imagine, if you will, that there is an intersection, a synthesis between the vertical line and the horizontal line. And the exact center point of balance between the vertical and the horizontal is the exact center point of balance in a star, where there are no distortions. None. Zero. That's perfect balance between the particles and the units of energy that represent consciousness that are in perfect balance with the one. Right? So when I'm androgynous, you see how that works between ions exchange. The atoms are in balance. The atmospheric consciousness is in perfect balance. Okay? That's perfect balance. So the question sort of had to do with the balance between the giving and the sharing of electrons, protons, and neutrons to be in balance. And so that means that the consciousness, what we're experiencing, is a state of balance. So when I was a child growing up, and I realized by virtue of the words that are being exchanged, because letters and words are energy, I'm always in a state of balance, right? In my water worlds, my atmospheric pressure between low and high is balanced. Now you're into hot fission and cold fusion related to gender programming. Okay, that's because that's what it is. They were programming males, right? All about all the military, all the male dominant stuff, right? And that's why the males are deeply wounded. Or if you will, the negative side. That would be your negative RH factor polarity side of things, of holding the other one captive as a source of energy. Okay? Now you can see how this works with a metatronic death style, or a state of consciousness is experiencing being in a whole. And the way that you know that those units of consciousness are in a whole is because I use certain words that sort of connect to a larger library, chasing electrons. You can see it at any four-way intersection in a city. Stand there, sit on a park bench sometime and just watch a four-way intersection, which is a tetrahedron, right? When you have vehicles that are traveling down the circuit board, which is a motherboard. And you'll notice, for example, when they hit a red light or a stop sign, snap my finger, and then they'll have usually some traffic cop sitting in a place where the AI already knows, which is why it will direct one of its cyborgs or androids, right, or bots, what I call chat bots, roaming chat bots, or robocops. That's sitting there as a traffic cop where when you roll up to that stop sign, you just can't wait to get around that corner fast enough. So you don't want to have to stop. You want to keep going. Why? You're chasing time-space vectors in order to be free of something that's holding your battery captive, that's feeding on your electrons. Because the energy security of the consciousness that is held captive to a money system is chasing electrons in order to do what? Zero out, which is the balance between the negative and the positive bloodlines. Okay, or if you will, simply negative and positive ions that are not unbalanced. So now you get into the whole idea of what it means to be in service to self and what it means to be in love, being what love is, in service to others. So if you're in service to others, you're experiencing what love is through your own heart. So you know that you have a connection to the highest state of consciousness, which is what love is, because you're experiencing the flow of energy that's flowing through your heart and your soul, right, upon which you're experiencing the grand creator, the source from which it all began, which is the center point of fire, which is the tetrahedron, the flash point of light, and then you have an ignition point, which burns the gas, which is hydrogen. That's what moves the poop, out of the gate. No distortions when there's perfect balance. So when it came to money issues, when I was a child, I already knew as if the information was preloaded. You know what preloaded and sound buffering is, right? And this is sort of how we get into the difference between what I remember, because when I was 4 years of age, I had what we call bleed through memories, which means I'm still aware of it. I'm aware of the pre-matter phase of consciousness, which is experiencing eternity, because I was experiencing that through my heart and my soul. So when I realized at 4 years of age, by translating the codes in the environment that I was operating in with my software, that I was on a spiritual battlefield, which is an energy war. Now we're back to the minus/the plus. So the manner in which the exchange is taking place between electrons, protons, and neutrons is based on the introduction of money into the system, the planetary software system of consciousness. So therefore, every battery becomes a resource upon which to feed on, because it's running out of energy, because it doesn't have a source of energy in which it's experiencing eternity, which means it's not experiencing the primal sound and light field, is it? No. Why? Because it lost its connection. It does not have a line of communication to the primal sound and light field. And if it's lost its consciousness ability to experience the primal sound and light field, then where is it going to get its energy from in lower density? Those that do. That's why shields are up. Now you have the snake that's eating more of what it's aware of, which is itself, which means it can't feed on those whose shields are up. And so the more that it's trying to feed on us is return to sender, because it's not getting any more energy from us. So therefore, the source of energy that it's now feeding on is feeding on itself. That means it's cannibalizing its own assets. That's when Octeles was correct when he said these bots will be less relevant over time. Because the source of energy that machines, or machine-coded DNA that does not have a primal sound and light field connection anymore, as a result of what they do to themselves, as a result of going to war against us, does what? They're losing time, which means they're losing energy. That means that the source of energy that they were at one time drawing the current from, they're no longer able to draw that living current, which is our current, into it, which means it's losing more and more energy over time space. Therefore, it's wanting to accelerate because it realizes I'm losing more than what I'm gaining because I'm not gaining any more energy as a result of the shields being up. So it's pulling energy from the sources from which it's connected to, which are what? The ones that don't have a primal light and sound field connection. That's your black hole state of consciousness. Okay? So in other words, they're accelerating the rate in which they're losing energy, which is like letting the air out of a balloon. Why? Because it's not able to maintain its state of awareness in which it has a source of energy to draw from except for what it already has, which is called its reserves. Until the tank is run dry. Implosion. So it's running out of fuel. That's why its ability to number crunch at a speed at which it once was able to crunch numbers to maintain what it was aware of through all the biometric scanning, it's losing its contact from batteries that it was once aware of. Now you get into the stealth code end of things, and why us that do Guardian grid work run a stealth code so we're undetectable. Otherwise, it would take us out. And we wouldn't be able to successfully complete the mission that we're here to perform. So we were successful. So it's a done deal, like I've said before. Relax. And so that's why, from my perspective, when she asked me about, she was, you have a source of income as a result of the way that the money system is set up. Okay? So what I've always done is done it this way, is that whatever you're most comfortable with. Because at the end of the day, you want to maintain your balance between both sides of the magnets, right? The hot magnet, cold magnets. And if you're accustomed to using your energy in order to raise the amount of numbers that you have, because it really is math. When you get into the cost of living things, for example, just like the example that I used with my parents, who bought that house for $48,000, right? That was like in $61, right? And my dad was making between $48,000 and $60,000. I think he was making right around $60,000. So a $48,000 house, 48, the number 48, and he's making, say, 6, right? Versus what, 12, okay? And so nowadays, I went and looked to see what that house that I grew up in as a young male, right? Back in the early I was about 10 years old, is now worth, as I remember, over $1 million. So that means that back then, believe it or not, a young teenager, a carpenter, okay, meaning that they have a vocational skill, a carpenter, somebody that works 5 days a week, 8 hours a day working on a construction site, could have made enough money to buy a house, the same house that I was living in as a kid, with 3 bedrooms, a pool out back. Okay? That same carpenter doing the same job today could not live in. But a carpenter in 1961 could live in that house in 61, based on the number games. So it's an AI war gamer. Yes. And so these are word war games. Word wars, which are fire letters, because letters are numbers and numbers are letters. So word war letters, which is why they're called information wars, inform, because inform is a formation of energy that is in flow. Form follows function, and the function is mathematics. So when the math codes and the physics codes are in balance, then the water worlds are in balance. That means that our consciousness is in balance. So it's a matter of really doing the math, learning to adjust the frequency modulation of the mathematics that represent the radio set that you're running between one magnet and the other magnet. Right? Remember I did the video about what it's like to be androgynous? How many units of how many androgens do we have here? You know, that are perfectly balanced, right? Which means their nuclear reactors are in balance. That's what it is. The nucleus of a cell, right? Okay, so in other words, are the ions in balance? Which means all the units of consciousness, from the smallest to the largest, from the molecule to the elementals, are they in balance? Are we doing a dance? That's called the dance of being free. I don't use the word Dom, even though it's a free Dom, because the word Dom can be triggered and associated and indexed using letters and numbers to everything that's held in trauma that's yet to be cleared. Because the last thing that I ever want to do is to trigger a negative magnetic polarity space vector. Okay? That does what? Changes the equation, causes an imbalance versus being in balance. So what you're doing is you're learning how to balance your numbers. Prime numbers, right? Take the letter 6 and 9. You can take a 6, flip it up, right? Now you have a 9 that's on the vertical side. And so it looks like a 9 and a 9, but you got to flip it the other way, right? That's called an axial spin on the vertical, right? So you have the 9 that's like this, and then you have a 6 that's like this. Flip the 6 up like this, okay, from the bottom to the top, and then invert it, right? So then now you have, if you will, a 9 and a 9, right? Or a 6 and a 6. Now you're into the 6 and a 6, right? Now you're in a negative and a positive. So a 6 and a 6 and a 9 and a 9 and a 9. 15. What's 1 and 5? 6. 15D, right? D wave. What is a D? Vertical line and half a circle. On the right side, I've mentioned this before, but on your keyboard, you don't get a D wave that goes to the left, right? The left hemisphere, right? The left side of a quadrant, if you will. You know, the quadratic function. What is the function of a quad, which is 4, which is a tetrahedron? So when you have the cross, which is the vertical and the horizontal, right? The longitude and the latitude. So in each one of those spaces on the top side, if you wanted to number them as 1, 2, 3, and 4, right? Then you have the top on the left and the bottom on the left, the top on the right and the bottom on the right, right? Playing numbers games, playing letters games. So that's a quad, right? Quadratic equation or a quad function, which is a function of 4, which is a function of fire. Now you're into earth, wind, water, and fire. When earth, wind, water, and fire are all in balance, then all the spirits that represent the spirals, which represent the math and the physics, are all in balance between two magnetic planetary poles. Right? So it's a matter of maintaining your balance. So my dad, for example, when I was a child growing up, used to take a paper and said, do it this way. Run a straight line down, 1D, the paper, right? And then put over here on the left side, right, what were known as assets and liabilities, on what you're going to use your energy for. So you have the income or the input side, the inflow of energy represented by the numbers. And then you have the outflow represented by the numbers that you're going to use to acquire more energy or if you will, holographic mathematical information codes. So the codes over on the right and the codes that are on the left, you want them to be balanced. So that means you don't want to be taking more than you're generating, do you? Or what happens? You're going to run out of power. So you want to be self-generating more power all the time, which means you're gifting away electrons at a higher accelerated rate of speed with your consciousness, which is what your soul is doing. So your soul and your consciousness and the nature of your spirit, which is the nature of the flow, which is in balance, so now you're balanced with the center point of a cross, okay? You're experiencing the primal light and sound field accelerating a high rate of electrical current, the real stuff. The real McCoy, right? So when the D on the right and the D on the left become one, eternal sun, the center point of that eternal sun is running hot on. Cool colors. So I would simply say this to you, Conjoy, whatever you feel most comfortable with. This was when I was a child growing up, and I can only share this with you by experience. When I was about 14 years of age, and I went to a high school where most of the parents that represented the children that I went to school with in high school, which was in North Orange County, their parents made a significant amount of money. They were usually either lawyers and judges, CEOs of large corporations, making 6 and 7 figures back in the early 1960s. So that's a lot of money, okay? And so it was not unusual when you're thinking about comparative, how we compare, what we're comparing, the difference between, say, what I use my energy for versus what they use their consciousness energy for to experience. So I remember seeing one day this young girl that was a fellow student at this high school, like I was a freshman at the time, watching her running out into the parking lot to be with this young man who got, as a birthday present, a brand new vehicle. That the average person in America doesn't have the money to afford. So here you have a 16-year-old high school student that's driving around in a car that most people today in America don't have the money to afford. And it's a 16-year-old that's got something like that, right? So the vehicle represents money, which is based on an observation. Now we're back into value. What has the greatest value? We know that love has the greatest value, right? Right? Because love is free, right? That's free energy. So it doesn't cost anything to experience what love is. So this is when I realized when I was a child, and I'm trying to get rid of everything that represents material form in order to experience pre-matter form. Okay, which means it's not about the material side, which means it's not about the matter side. When I'm experiencing the non-matter side. That's why I was giving everything away. Right? That's why that people would say to me, "What's the matter with you? You're always out of money." Because I'm not in the business of acquiring electrons. I'm in the business of giving them away in order to heal a planet. More voltage, right? Right? Experiencing more voltage. So what they do is they enumerate electrons with numbers, which represent biometric accounts that are being fed on and held as battery slaves to run a system. A fallen system. That's what it is. These are fallen states of consciousness, which represent fallen states of star-seeded races. Right? Now, when you put this into the larger picture of the Guardian materials, and how high up this actually goes, it goes back to what I've always said, control. Control over energy, which means imagine that you've taken the leash off of every electron. How many folks do you know that are willing to do that? How many folks do you know that are willing to walk away from all the money they've ever made and go live out in the woods in nature somewhere like a giraffe does? Okay, I mean, you don't see a giraffe applying for a job to go to work for Raytheon, do you? Or an elephant wanting to go to work for, Grumman Aircraft or BlackRock, right? Or an insurance company. They're getting all the energy they need, right? So the instruction set that it's running on, trinary versus binary, right? So it's what we're really talking about here is learning how to maintain your speed, right? So that you're not needing to feed on nobody else. So that's why the island of Kauai was a significant marker for me, because I realized that I was already being provided everything that I need, but I've already got everything that I need because I'm experiencing what love is. That's why as a small child at 4 years of age, it's called navigating a field of fallen consciousness and trying to locate a space where you can find somebody that's got any love in their heart anymore. That's the truth of it. Because you realize something is feeding on their battery, right? So now you get into relationships between units of energy that are conscious and alive and living, that are communicating with everybody, right? So now you realize these are all antennas. Antennas communicating with other antennas. What I become aware of, what you become aware of. What are you aware of? Communicate that to me. So when I am what love is, now you realize I'm communicating to you that I am what love is. What are you? I am what love is too. Now we're in harmony. The waves are harmony. Now they're equalized. That's called n equals 0, which means I'm equal unto all creation I'm gifting love to. That makes it simple. That means we're balanced. That means that the spheres are balanced. That's called the law of balance, which is the law of spheres, which is the law of least effort to give away energy forever. That's why I used to sign my little love letters to girls when I was all my life, actually. I will love you. I love you forever and always. Forever. Eve, like Eve, electric voltage, E, right? The electric's always on. And always. Always means the center point of that star, there isn't anybody not getting juice. Right? From the inside to the outside. Everything inside that star is experiencing what I am, which is what love is, goes on forever. That's an eternal star. So everything that is out there is experiencing the eternal star, which means anything on the outside of that ball, right, is experiencing that ball of energy, right? Blast furnace. So yeah, it's like experiencing being a blast furnace. So now you're navigating a field in what we call what's held in memory, what's been preloaded in memory, which is all the programming. That we've allowed ourselves to be held captive to a system of programming us to believe that we needed them in order to do what? Be happy, joyful. So you realize you don't need money in order to feel happiness and joy, right? Right? Because you already got all the energy that you need because you're experiencing who you truly are. That means that you know who your true self is. You know the connection that you have with your creator. Right? So I know what my creator is. My creator is eternal unconditional love. So I'm experiencing eternal unconditional love. So I know from whence I came. It began out of what love is. So you know that's eternal fire. That's eternal spirit. So that's eternal love. So that's what we do. Right? So anytime that we're experiencing something that's less than what that is, it's called being natural, being in a natural state. See, being in a natural state, which is the natural flow of the way that energy is seeking the pathway of least electrical density in order to do what? Distribute a higher accelerated rate of electrons, okay, in which that light is being experienced. Now they're experiencing higher energy, more voltage. Now they're experiencing more light, which is what love is. And I realize how simple that sounds because that's how I experience being what I am in energy. And others don't experience that. That's what's so painful. Right? So what it really boils down to is what we choose in our own memory, so to speak, of what we allow ourselves to be held captive by. So when you're sorting through your inventory, which is your memory bank, of what you become aware of by having a higher state of awareness of what you were being held captive to that doesn't serve your best energetic interest, right? Because you're held captive by it. So it's a matter of knowing what you're held captive by, what you're not held captive by. Now, where that gets into sound compression, particularly with the numbers 3, 6, and 0, which is 9, and 1080p. You know what 1080p is, right? Go run a torsion field movie player. You know, when you download a movie off the internet like Netflix, and you'll see how it's sound compressing. That's preloaded. That means there's a time delay. When you're in an eternal creation sphere environment, there isn't any time delay. None. Okay? That means the speed at which eternity is thus manifesting into creation, what it experiences is no time. Which means there is no delay. It's immediate manifestation. Those are the worlds we come from. That's what I remembered at 4 years of age. I have memories of being in that environment, so I'm still there. Okay? I am experiencing, there's only a part of my energy that is experiencing being here in this. There are other places that I'm simultaneously experiencing that are eternal creation realms, which means all the spirit and the souls that are experiencing those particular worlds are not experiencing anything less than eternal unconditional love, which are the worlds that are being created and thus experienced by those units of consciousness that are there experiencing that. Right? That's why I've always said, wherever you find love and living spirit in the flow of that energy, you'll find us. That's the highest state of consciousness. That's the source from which it all began, which is what love is. So the more love you're experiencing in your heart, the less you're held captive by those things that keep your consciousness in a lower state, by being held captive by that. So it's a matter of sorting, if you will, sorting your library and choosing to get rid of those things that you begin to realize doesn't serve you anymore. Right? And experiencing being on fire to create your own reality that is different from the one you were experiencing before that you were held captive to. So what I have done over time, I did it incrementally, which is like releasing an enormous amount of visual mathematical information codes that is represented by the programming that I was willing to experience, right, in order to experience future events, if you will, the way that the present, the past, and the future work, running a TV station, right, where you can fast forward, rewind, right, play two, record one, so you're running I use generic terms. It's no different than running a supercomputer that's a DVD video player or a TV station. That's why when I was a child growing up and people would ask me, hey, what station are you running? Now you get into stations and base stations. Now we're back into base math, right? Mathematical programming, base 12. Okay, the base 12 math, acid and alkaline. And I would say I run flower power. That's my radio station. I run flower power, right? I'm both the seed and the grower as one. Means I'm one with all creation that we're gifting love to. So that we're just as much a flower as we are the seed side. Now you're back to the nuclear reactors when they become one, which means they're balanced, which is negative / to positive. That's why I have no axe to grind with nobody. That's why I spent so much time working with hybrids. I love them just as much as I do me, because that's what we are. We are eternal love. So we give love to all creation spheres, everything that is in the all creation, no matter who you are, where you come from. Whether you're a bug or whether you're a bird, or whether you're a whale, whether you're a dolphin, a sauropod, right? Love sauropods. You ever seen a sauropod? The big dinosaurs, where you could be a half a mile away and you can hear it walking. That's when I don't know if I ever mentioned this to you, I met Sasquatch, Bigfoot, when I was on my way almost up to the Canadian border in the state of Washington, right along the vertical line that runs between the border of western Idaho Panhandle and Washington State. And I pulled into a turnout to rest because I've been driving all day long just to view the landscape, right? And I could hear what you're actually doing is measuring the mass and the density based on the vehicle that you can now hear that is breaking branches or twigs. Because the amount of weight, right, that's breaking certain twigs, you're measuring what you know that you have in memory. If you will, what's out there in nature, which means bears weigh a certain amount of weight, right? A giraffe, a lion, an elephant, whatever it happens to be is based on its density and its weight by the gram, right? Parallelograms. So you can tell based on the weight, the approximate size of the vehicle that's moving through space. So I was experiencing something that I knew based on the density or the mass that was represented by the vehicle was not a bear, okay? It was not a giraffe. It was not an elephant. But it was something that was walking on 2 feet, because you can scan and map from a distance, sort of remotely, okay, the approximate size, color, and shape of the vehicle with its geometric sound and light patterns. You get sort of a scan of what it is that's out there. So I waited around, and then sure enough, I turned around and I looked at it, and there he was. I shouldn't say gender. I didn't look, and that information was not volunteered. But there was Sasquatch standing right in front of me, probably 8 feet, eyeballs to eyeballs. How you doing? So I jumped in my vehicle. I went down to the ranger station and say, hey. So that's not unusual for that to happen, right? Because what happens is its antenna, Sasquatch's antenna, was picking up on my antenna. Oh, I know that antenna. I think I'll mosey on over to go see that other antenna, right? So I could tell by the way that it was moving, okay, that it's not an aggressor. It wasn't seeking to do me or anything any harm. It was coming to check me out and say hi. Another playmate in the universe. Hey, how's it going, buddy? What are you doing? Right? Speaking the same language of light, which is what love is. The language of light communication. Have a great day. I love you all. Be good to yourselves.